Thomas, we've heard a lot from Bill Clinton recently because he was sort of overseeing a lot of this legislation back in the 90s, DOMA and Don't Ask, Don't Tell. He said recently that he's had some sleepless nights over those pieces of legislation. He wrote an op-ed sort of defending where he was in his mind. Doesn't really seem to jibe with some of the New York Times reporting about Bill Clinton urging John Kerry in 2004 to come out of gay marriage. But, you know, that's okay. We can take him at his word now. Do you think history is going to judge Bill Clinton 50 years from now for DOMA and Don't Ask, Don't Tell as sort of acceptable within the span of the moment? Or do you think we're going to look back and see those as two serious sort of blights on his record?
As you point out, I think history will look back to think that that was acceptable at the time for what was in front of President Clinton. Obviously, he's showing contrition through that op-ed that came out earlier in March, and then following in the next week or so with Secretary of State or former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton coming out in a full-throated endorsement of marriage equality. And it was obvious that the Clintons had to do that 1-2 step if Hillary Clinton wants to line herself up for potentially running for president in 2016. It makes sense. But for President Clinton to come out and ask for the court to strike down part of his presidential legacy, I mean, that's huge, and that's never really been done before. And obviously, so that shows a great act of contrition and knows that a lot of hard thought has gone into that, and especially now when we see the fact that we have marriage equality in 9 states in the District of Columbia. You know, that's 20% right now, geographically, statewide, and with the district included, where people are allowed to go ahead and embrace marriage equality. And they've done so, as we've seen, you know, just through the electorate process in November. The fact that when 4 ballot initiatives were put forth in 4 different states, marriage equality won overwhelmingly. So it really is time. We're looking at a different future ahead from here forward.
So, Mike, if Thomas is right and we do see the court go in that direction and take out DOMA, do you think that that gives the court a little more confidence to duck the harder federal marriage question that was up yesterday?
I think that, again, it comes down to Justice Kennedy, and on both days he seemed extremely skittish to even approach the equal protection question would really guarantee a federal right to marriage. So it's going to come down to him, and today I don't think played at all into what he's going to decide for Prop 8. They're going to be for him 2 distinct cases, united only in his fear of having a robust marriage equality position.
Thomas, if you guys wouldn't mind if I interject, the only thing that might be the common thread for all of them is the fact that these are state rights issues. So on the one hand, as we look at Prop 8, you know, they're going to look at it as being states' rights, and they might just kick it back. And when it comes to DOMA itself, and especially through Kennedy's words, looking at it today through the lens of, well, was DOMA created to incentivize states to actually come up with some type of anti-marriage legislation? And if so, well, that's, you know, Congress not being neutral and not allowing states to lead on their own accord. So what is the true purpose of DOMA in this respect if state rights are, you know, if states are supposed to have the rights to be able to achieve the marriage parameters that they want?
Thomas, I want to get a little personal with you on this issue, but it is a very personal issue. We're talking about certifying people's love. Let me play a little bit of Edie Windsor talking about marriage and then get you to talk about your marriage.
We heard from literally hundreds of people. I mean, little playmates and schoolmates and colleagues and friends and relatives all congratulating us and sending love because we were married. So it's a magic word. For anybody who doesn't understand why we want it and why we need it, okay, it is magic.
Thomas, we both know marriage is indeed a magic word. It changes how society sees you, apart from our relationship to the government. Can you talk about what marriage means to you, that civil union, if you had been restricted to that, what that would not confer on you as opposed to what marriage gives you and your husband?
Well, you know, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak personally, take off the professional hat for a second, but I don't think that we would have gone for a civil union. That wouldn't have been a point to us to achieve that. Getting married in the fall was something really personal and really incredible that we got to experience with our families there supporting us, our loved ones. So, I highly recommend it. I think marriage is great. I mean, I do. I think it's great. I mean, it's only made our lives better. And I think as we see through the demonstration of Edie Windsor, I mean, here's an 83-year-old woman who was coming out to demonstrate the decades of love that she had with her wife Thea, and the fact that she's being penalized by our government, the fact that she's being restricted to over 1,100 different federal rights that would be afforded to anybody if I, just chose to marry a woman. I mean, it's just, you think about that, and in the context, it's about time for people not to be separate but equal. It's the otherness. It's time for that to go away, and we look back on historic cases like Loving versus Virginia of 1967, and it was a unanimous decision then. And the Supreme Court might have had a lofty goal of wanting to see America as colorblind, having Loving versus Virginia and allowing for interracial marriage. That certainly hasn't done away with racism in our country.
Sure.
And if the Supreme Court, gets rid of DOMA and goes ahead and strikes, Prop 8 out of the way, is that going to get rid of homophobia in this country? No. But it does make the government stand up to appreciate the fact that the LGBT community exists in this country. We're good tax-paying Americans. We're simple. We have boring marriages, just like heterosexual people. And it's not anything hypersexualized. And that's the one thing that we really get away from when it comes to talking about lesbian and gays. It's a hypersexualized otherness that they're thrown into, and